Can you do a shout out to Vosh's charity stream and Twitch raid? He's raised money for Palestine Children's Relief Fund. Hold on a second. That rings a bell to me. Let me look that up. Yeah, Palestine Children's Relief Fund has been criticized due to its financial affiliation with the Holy Land Foundation, which was shut down for suspected funneling of donations to terrorist organizations. So no, that's not something I'm going to get involved in.
Okay, let's look it up. It was criticized due to an attempted donation. So this organization called the Holy Land Foundation had attempted to donate money to them, and that organization was shut down by the US government because it was suspected of funneling donations to terrorist organizations. The criticism is that they almost got a donation from a bad place. Okay. The Holy Land Foundation has asked the U.S. Treasury Department allow a transfer of $50,000 from its accounts. Okay, and they continue to ask for it. Interesting. Well, let's actually read this to make sure that the no Vosh YouTube editor came on here and fucked with the Wikipedia article. I mean, it just sounds like they're doing cool shit. And that some terrorist organization wanted to give them money. And they still want to give them money because their money's fucked. Okay. Wait, why is this significant at all? Who cares? Any other source on this? These are both from the same source too. Okay. I'm just realizing now that he says because of his connection, like, but what is the connection, Deepak? They just tried to donate money. It's not like they have like some formal connection, at least not one that was outlined in what we read of the New York Times article. Who cares if David is a Zionist or not? Deepak was overly critical and Vosh was anti-Semitic. Well, was he anti-Semitic? Let's go ahead and get the next clip.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Deepak is a Zionist. That's not surprising to me.
Okay, so that's what they're mad about. Okay. Let's just make sure we're all working with the similar definitions here. To be honest, the only time I heard the word Zionist in real life is when somebody wants to insult Jewish people to the point it came back as a shock for me to learn it wasn't just a slur. Zionism seems to be everywhere from Israel existing to Israel being an ethno-state. Well, that makes it a not very helpful term. Because we would need to know the way that Vosh is wording it, right? Or like what Vosh means.
Zionist is a very, 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 very broad term.
If Zionism just means that you're supportive of the Israeli state, like maybe that's not like an awful thing to call somebody. But if when you say Zionist, you mean like they literally want to like retake Palestinian land and populate it with Jewish settlers from around the world to escape persecution and retake the Holy Land of Canaan, like maybe that's a little bit worse.
Just so you guys know, the source or like the assertion that he's referring to there is an old one, and it stems from like the charity has assisted children and those children's parents were associated with an organization associated with Hamas.
That's not what we read at all. Maybe he's thinking of something different, but that's not at all what the article said. At least Deepak had the decency to Google the Wikipedia. Could be something different that he's referring to, but it certainly wasn't what Deepak was referring to.
The problem is that Hamas is pretty broadly integrated into Palestine. They have their hands in a lot of things. I mean, they're one of the dominant power structures there, of course. So pretty much everything in Palestine is about 2 degrees of separation from Hamas, and people will use this as an excuse to label everything they don't like as terrorist sympathizers. And it's a way, essentially the legitimizing mechanism that allows Israel to do what it does over there. Yeah. It's I think it's an incredibly irresponsible mentality, and I think this is definitely a major blind spot for David Pakman, which is unfortunate. But
damn, all that from that one clip. Do you have like other information of stuff that Deepak has said that's like fueling this belief? He literally just read a Wikipedia article half-assedly and said he doesn't like the charity. I'm not getting all this other stuff. Like, the only other bit that I know that would relate him to Israel at all is the fact that he's Jewish. But I know that people are making the jump that that's why he called him a Zionist and then he's being anti-Semitic because of that. But like, I mean, I could see that since that's the only other information that I have personally that I know about Deepak that could lead to this. But it could be he's heard other things from Deepak. I'm not sure. Like, people keep giving him the excuse for it. This is 26 hours in. I get really mean after 4 hours of streaming. So like, I'm sympathetic to that. I don't think we should let that like get people out of things, right? But if he walks it back within like 2 minutes of saying it, like that's probably fine. I walk stuff back 2 minutes after saying it. I think that's a reasonable thing. Like maybe overextended. Let's see if that happens here.
I saw him getting some criticism from his followers, it seemed, because he wasn't talking about anything going on in Israel, Palestine, and I think the reason why is because he thinks Israel's in the right, which kind of goes against the predominant left-leaning narrative right now. So he didn't want to talk about it because he knew it would only bring him controversy and drama.
David's coverage is not going over anything Israel-Palestine related because Vosh suspects that it's because he holds an opinion that's not popular right now, and that's why he's choosing not to cover it.
I've been pushed away from talking about certain topics, at least in a certain way, because I've realized there's no upside. My core audience will agree. Right-wingers will disagree, as they often do, but there is this sliver of the left that will be so furious with me that they will wreak havoc over our entire online presence.
This is so cringe. A small amount of research would have told him that Deepak doesn't mind criticizing Israel. It's super suspicious for him to assume that. Yeah, but Vosh assumes stuff all the time, right? Like he assumed that I had DGG brain rot because I criticized him in a video and I accused him of lying. Vosh does make these jumps where he starts talking shit, and he talks shit at a level that's like unwarranted, right? But we all do that. I'm sure that I've done things where I talk shit on people and it's beyond, what is probably warranted. So remember, I'm trying to be a better book smarts today. So I'm just trying to give you guys a more holistic, like more real picture. But that's something that he does for sure. He kind of goes over the top with the shit that he says.
I'm not saying he's like some hardcore Netanyahu stan or anything, because I don't believe that at all. I just... No, his opinion's different from mine on this. Maybe saying he's a Zionist is a little bit too strong of language. I would like to amend it if I could.
He's walked it back. Let's see what this walk back looks like.
I think he plays enlightened centrist on it a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, which is fair. Like, if that's what you think, that's fair.
A little bit more charitable to Israel than I think is comfortable. A little bit less charitable to Palestine than I think is comfortable. That kind of thing.
So there you go. He said something spicy. He got clipped. Steven took that clip and ran with it. When in reality, literally like within 2 minutes, he walks it back and turns it into something completely acceptable. That's kind of unfair. Why would Steven do that? Why, oh, why would Steven be so unfair to this guy? Why, oh, why would he clip something like that? Destiny isn't always fair to people he doesn't like. Well, ain't that the truth, dude? If you want to word your criticism of Vosh that, like, he has a knee-jerk thing that he does where he makes accusations of people that are totally, like, unwarranted or at a level that's, like, beyond what is probably warranted or what he probably even believes in, then that's fair, right? Because you've seen him do that multiple times. He did that in the clip with me. He did that here. He's done that with Steven. So, like, we've seen this happen multiple times. And I think it's fair to understand and recognize that that is a problem and probably one, like, worthy of criticism. That's fine. But that's not the way I see it worded on Twitter. Destiny explains this tweet here. Okay, let's watch it. We're really going down the rabbit hole in this.
To make my analogy work, it would be more apt if I said, the writing needs to stop. We need to mow down dipshit N-words. Well, okay, hold on. I shouldn't call them N-words, but what I really like, that would be like more comparable. It's just super fucking weird. It's just like, I'm giving you this for life advice, even for those that disagree with me. You don't call Jewish people that don't live in Israel, to call somebody in America a fucking Zionist. You are right there. Like, you are standing side by side with a white supremacist that's like, oh, it's beautiful. I never thought we would come together like this. It's so beautiful. Like, you are literally shoulder to shoulder.
I had no idea that word was that bad from reading the article. But I'm uneducated in this. I could see the K slur being that bad. Because the K slur is like, no matter what, an awful thing to call somebody. But this, I'm not sure about this thing. I'm a Jew. I feel like it is. Does it not matter who calls you that and in what context, though? Like, imagine we're at work together, okay? And imagine you're talking about how you hope that there's some sort of retaliation because one of your family members was nearly harmed in a missile attack from Hamas. And then imagine if a coworker responded to you and said like, oh, of course you're a fucking Zionist, dude. I could have fucking guessed it. I knew the moment that I met you and I read your fucking name on the roll call sheet. That's not good. That's bad. That's probably not good. That's probably the level that some of the people that are on Destiny's team are kind of feeling this, right? Am I correct? Like that's pretty bad. But for a political person in a political position to make that claim after somebody shit on their thing, it's rude. It for sure is, but I'm not sure it's rude because he's an anti-Semite or he's making an anti-Semitic remark. I'm pretty sure it's rude because he's making assumptions about this dude's political beliefs off of one comment that he gave. It's not the same contextually, given that he's like a politics guy, he's talking about politics. And a walk back in the workplace with that person would look very different than a walk back of a streamer dude whose job it is to talk for 26 hours straight, who has been spending all this time trying to raise money for kids that are being killed by the state, right? Like, that's very different, in my opinion. I could be totally wrong here, but I just don't feel like those are equivalent things. It's not that it's a slur. It's kind of like calling a person who supports BLM a black supremacist because of that support. But Zionism doesn't mean that you think that the Jewish people are superior. It means that you support like a Jewish state and the continued existence of that Jewish state. Like it's such a vague thing as well, whereas black supremacist is like pretty particular. He clearly means it in a mean way though. I'm not going to like hold back on that. He very clearly means it as a demeaning thing to call him, but I think he means it to be demeaning insofar as like Deepak is not in lockstep with the leftist beliefs at the moment, right? Because Vosh also kind of built onto that like he's not playing to the audience the right way, that he has an opinion that's wrong think, that it's not in line with what the lefterly people online should be believing. And Vosh's whole thing is catering to that audience of people. It has been for a long time. So it would make sense to me that Vosh would see power in pointing out that David may have a belief set that's not in line with what everybody should be believing right now that's on that team. Zionist in certain circles is absolutely an insult. I could believe that for sure. And I think that even Vosh recognizes the negativity in the statement that he made and that it's perhaps like reaching a bit too far because he immediately walks it back.
If somebody like self-identifies as a Zionist and they've got some dream of Israel or whatever, then sure. And I think there are Jews that do call themselves Zionists, that consider themselves Zionists. In which case, yeah, fine, that's fine. But damn, to call somebody a like, I'd say it's like a million times worse than calling me a Gusano, but nobody even thinks that's bad. To call somebody a Zionist who's Jewish outside of Israel is super, 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 super fucking weird. Not to mention the fact that that's not even Pacman's position, because I'm pretty sure Pacman is against the settlements that Israel is pushing into the West Bank and everything. So
I've been an advocate for a two-state solution for a long time, which will never happen for as long as the two sides are Netanyahu and a split Hamas plus Palestinian Authority. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that will ever lead to a sensible outcome.
I think that that's a stronger argument here, though, is that like maybe Vosh should be aware of the fact that like David holds these positions about Israel that are counter to the narrative of him being like a Zionist, and that maybe it's irresponsible of him to make these claims when David's been very publicly critical of Netanyahu's regime or the efforts to settle the Palestinian land or something like that. Like, that seems to be a much stronger claim, in my opinion, than these other ones. The Zionism thing, I'm getting the feel, is like a hardcore position. And it's a hardcore position even in Israel. But it is a hardcore position of like the Israeli people, right? But if you take somebody who's not related to Israel, like they're not from there, they just happen to be a Jewish person, and then you're assuming like political beliefs that they have based on their Jewish identity and anything that they say regarding Palestine or anything to do with Israel, like to then make the leap to assume that they support all these other things like the expansion of a Jewish home country or whatever. Yeah, that seems weird. It'd be like if somebody was African-American or black in this country and they were talking about black rights and you assume that they were a black nationalist and that they want to ship all the white people away. Like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But him being Jewish and in another country is because like you're assuming political beliefs that he has based solely on his identity as a Jewish person. When you're in a real life, you need to know more than this to like assume these things of people. If you're Jewish, you may need to put up protective mechanisms, or you may be more aware of racial insensitivity or people being rude to you. And so you may have defenses up to like quickly put the people that make those claims in the box of anti-Semitic. For me personally, like, I need more information to assume that somebody is anti-Semitic. I need to have heard other things. I need to know that, like, they're talking shit about Jewish people and money, or Jewish people ruling the world, or Jewish people taking all the power, or like these other claims that are often from anti-Semitic people. I need more information because, in my opinion, that's a big claim. That's a big label to put on somebody, that they're anti-Semitic. I think we need more information to be deducing this about people. But if you are one of those minorities that is persecuted and whatever, that's fine. If you have a lower bar for that, I have a higher bar for that. I'm not impacted by people that are racist or people that are anti-Semitic. So for me, the bar has to be higher. I have to hear more to like make that conclusion about somebody, to make that logical leap. Pac-Man shouldn't have talked shit about this charity based on like one little entry in the Wikipedia that was completely lame and a nothing burger, right? Like, and that was all that was in the criticism section. We didn't even have anything else, right? So he fucked up there. And then Vosh fucks up by retaliating and having this knee-jerk reaction of labeling him a Zionist, coming off as anti-Semitic to no small part of the audience, including Steven, then having to walk that back within 2 minutes of saying it, right? So, like, clearly, both of these people fucked up, as we've kind of discovered. While we're on the topic of like who is prejudiced against who, bear in mind that Stephen has a very clear and documented prejudice against left people or lefterly people. So when he's making these claims about lefterly people being anti-Semitic on the whole or moving in that direction, be very hesitant about like who that's coming from, right? Because this is a guy who's like very anti-lefterly. He's very against these like socialisty people, right? Like he has a very clear and documented prejudice against them. So maybe we want to be a little more careful in like how we interpret what he's saying, right? Because that's for sure a problem that he has, right? So, man, we've got a lot of problems like at every level of this.
A guy that was banned from Twitch for saying glass Israel, okay, and then is saying shit like Pac-Man is hiding his positions like a sneaky Jew, I guess, about his Zionism. Like, what? Like, Jesus, fuck. Like, if any alt-writer had made, like, this combination of statements, your fucking, like, Nazi radar would be exploding in your dashboard. You're like, oh, Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. That's absolute. There's 1,000,000%. Of course that's a Nazi. Like,
yeah, but that would be because it's coming from an alt-writer. Because it would be different if it came from an alt-writer. Because the context matters. It would be very different if it was coming from one of those people, because those people hold other beliefs that are in line with these. Like, they're indicative of a larger level like problem with the way that they're thinking about people and their interactions with the world. So like, yes, it would be much more problematic if those words are said by a different individual. And yes, it's also true that if Vosh continues to say these things, it will likely mean that people like me will be moved over into the camp of assuming that he may be anti-Semitic.
this is a group of people that like see somebody throw up an OK sign one time in their lifetime. And like, oh yeah, that guy's a 100% card-carrying fucking Nazi. And it's like, Jesus. Now again, I don't know if Vosh is a Nazi. Not a Nazi. I don't think Vosh is a Nazi or anti-Semitic or whatever.
I wish Destiny would just chill with his hate boner for lefties. I don't mind his criticisms, but holy fucking chill. Vosh said he outpaced Destiny until